Impossible to tell what the exposure is when the sun is shining full upon the screen of my camera. Hello. Welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a Sunday Stuff and Things, and on this Sunday Stuff and Things, we have stuff and things to talk about, including upcoming videos, things that you can watch on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon. We're going to talk about the response I got to the last video I posted on YouTube and Patreon. It was an overwhelming response, like so many comments. I think I had over 150 comments already in the last few days. And it's a very interesting subject, so we're going to discuss that a little bit. We'll get into your questions, comments, and feedback, and hashtag askstuffandthings. And then, of course, we'll have our Patreon shout-outs and updates after that at the end of the show. So stay tuned. Let's get into it. It's going to be good. All right, gang, what can you look forward to on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon? Well, this coming week, we are going to have exclusive to Patreon a I'm not going to like this video. And the thing I am not going to like, possibly, is Gawith, Hoggarth and Company Kendal Black Cherry. It is an aromatic blend. It is a Cavendish blend, completely Cavendish blend with black cherry flavoring. By all rights, I should not like this blend. So stay tuned on Patreon. It'll be posting this Monday on Patreon, and you'll see whether or not that is true. Whether or not I actually don't like the blend. Next, on YouTube and Patreon, I have a very cool thing, if I can reach it. So recently, I got a cool package from a company called MeePlus, and it's MEEPLUS. And they wanted to send me some of their journals, and I was very intrigued by them. I say no to people wanting to send me journals all the time because it just feels like it's just kind of retreading the same thing over and over again. But this one seemed really interesting, and MeePlus sent me 2 different journals. I do a box opening and first impressions video, and I really like these things. I'll give you a little preview. This is the MeePlus pocket size Slimpad. And as you can see, there is a pen holder. This comes separately with this elastic band. You will see this little brass spine on the back of this journal. If I open it up, it's a ring binder. Now that is nothing new, that's nothing revolutionary, but in the world of pocket journals or notebook systems, the Midoris of the world, I really like this. I think this is really clever and really smart. It's a very thin, very slim 3-ring binder, and so it's not overly bulky, and you can just, I mean, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but you can put pages in and take them out so easily. Like, you could put as much as you want in, as little as you want. You can organize things however you want. This leather cover is absolutely beautiful. Smells amazing. It's from an Italian tannery. This is their Pueblo leather, I believe. You can see there's a little bit of texture on there. It is absolutely lovely. And I'm really looking forward to showing you these things. We'll do a full review of these eventually, but I got this, the pocket size, and then I also got a personal size, which is a little bigger, but loving this a lot. And then the week after that, we will have a first impressions video, again, exclusive to Patreon, first impressions of Samuel Gawith, Perfection. Interesting blend, one that apparently has a touch of vanilla flavoring added, so it's in kind of a light aromatic English. It has Virginia's, Latakia, it has Turkish Oriental, and then I think it's steamed, and then it has a touch of vanilla flavoring. So maybe not something I would love typically, but Gawith usually makes some really good blends, so we shall see. But this first impression video will be posting on Patreon exclusively. And then after that, we're going to be talking more about the Winogrand, Gary Winogrand video I posted, which I couched as him sort of pitting the rangefinder camera system versus the SLR, the single lens reflex camera system. And there were so many responses, and I wasn't completely happy with, once I was reading some of the comments, I felt that I could maybe present a little bit more about this video and make it a little more clear what I was trying to say and what I was trying to illustrate that I thought Gary Winogrand was trying to say. So I think we are going to do a follow-up to that video soon. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up. Please stay tuned. Okay, gang, so last week I posted a video, and it was built around footage I had found of Gary Winogrand, who is a very famous photographer. He was, you know, featured in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, had several publications, collections of his work. He's considered kind of one of the most influential and important photographers of the 20th century. And he mostly worked, he hated this term himself, but in street photography, I guess you could say documentary photography. Someone who whose work I've enjoyed a lot as well. He is kind of a cantankerous guy. He's from the Bronx. He's got the accent. And in the 70s, he was teaching. He was actually teaching at the university. I think he was teaching in Houston, but then he was giving, or no, maybe in Austin. I can't remember. But he was giving a talk at Rice University in 1977. And during the talk, somebody asked him whether or not he thought that rangefinder cameras were obsolete. And the guy was trying to be a little bit, I guess he was trying to elicit a response from Gary Winogrand, and he got a response from Gary Winogrand, and Winogrand was very vocal, kind of went on a little bit of a rant about, I just spilled my coffee everywhere.
You talked about the view camera being, in a sense, archaic.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who said that the rangefinder Leica is archaic compared to an automatic exposure SLR?
Oh, I think they'd be stupid. And I can support it.
About how Leicas or rangefinder cameras are not obsolete, and how in fact the single lens reflex camera, the typical camera that you would think of from the time, was not, quote, a photographic tool. So obviously something controversial. There's nothing that will rile people up more than your gear isn't as good as my gear, or my gear is better for this particular thing. You can go all the way back to like the console wars with video games, or like Mac versus PC, or Apple iPhone versus Android phones. Like, it gets people riled up. And so I did a video about that, and I played basically the entire thing that he said, and then sort of tried to break it down, and I tried to illustrate it by showing what it looks like when you're looking through a viewfinder in a rangefinder camera and looking through an SLR viewfinder. And I wanted to read some of the responses here. This is kind of our feedback section, but I'm putting it in here because I wanted to answer some of these. You should definitely go back and watch the full video. It is, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and it's very interesting if you're into photography. It's also interesting, I've been posting a lot of photography content, haven't gotten a ton of views because my channel, you know, it wasn't mostly about photography before. I always was talking about other hobbies. A lot of it was about pipe stuff. And I think a lot of that audience just isn't all that interested in the photography stuff, which is fair enough. And so I would get maybe a few hundred views on the photography videos. I posted my video about buying the Leica M4. That got a couple thousand. One about like a month with the Leica M4. That got, I don't know, close to a couple thousand. This video, I posted it. So I wasn't expecting much out of this because it was photography related. It's got over 10,000 views within just a couple days and over 150 comments. So definitely touched a nerve a little bit with this. So I wanted to go over some of these comments. We have, this is at Leland Fitz, who says, I think it's much more forgiving what he says in the middle of the video. He says both are good, so the rangefinder and the SLR, but there is, quote, much more machinery in the Nikon. And I think that is true until today. So it's interesting, back then, when people were talking about SLRs, they were mostly talking about Nikons. He used Nikon interchangeably with SLR. And I think that is true until today. Leica stands apart because it does not offer 40 pages of menus to click through for every occasion that 90% of people never use. There is, of course, a place for that, and it's great that these companies like Nikon or Sony offer all to everyone, but Winogrand kind of foreshadows that when he says he only has that cluttered, technologized experience with hi-fi in his days, so like a hi-fi system to play music. He said that the only thing that he buys that has features he doesn't use is hi-fi equipment because he can't avoid it. It can be said that photography went the way hi-fi has been going long before. So it's interesting, a lot of the responses I got for this video, people were talking about it in terms of modern digital photography. And I guess you could have that debate, but I think you really do have to focus in, well, a fish just jumped really high and it was really big. I really do think you have to focus in on the technology of the time. So this was the late 70s, and it was film photography. And so Leica was kind of the banner holder for the rangefinders, and then Nikon for the SLRs. At Blake's Pipe says, I feel like I'm learning DOS. It's been so long since I used a physical film camera. My brain has dumped all this information. I took photography in high school and continued with art and advertising into the 90s with using my own photos to use for design. Also used print magazine ads, but thanks for the memories. Yeah, I hadn't done much film photography since college, so it's definitely a learning curve to get back into it, but definitely worth it in my opinion. At B True says, I found using my SLR with an 80mm lens and a slightly wider aperture produces fantastic portrait photos. People are texting me, which is not acceptable right now. Ugh. I will turn off my ringer. Excuse me. Wider aperture produces fantastic portraiture photos because the subject is crisp and in focus while the surroundings are out of focus and not distracting. I haven't been able to replicate that with a rangefinder, but then again, I don't have a long lens for my M3. So I just wanted to include this because what you're discussing is a shallow depth of field, and you get that with a longer lens. It's easier to get that with a longer lens because you are separating the focal distance is much longer, so you have a compression, and when you're focusing on something very narrowly, something closer in the frame, then yes, the focus or the background is going to be much more blurred. If I have my 600mm lens and I'm focusing on something, I don't know, 20 feet away, the only thing that's in focus in the frame is going to be the thing that I'm focusing on very narrowly. So yes, obviously, if you had a 90mm or an 80mm lens for your rangefinder, you could get that same effect. You could get that separation. It's not the camera system itself, it's the kind of lens you're using. At PD Corliss says, when they took the rangefinder spot out of the SLR body and the depth of field scales off of the lens, mostly zooms, then the next logical step was to create autofocus systems because nothing is ever really sharp when looking at the ground glass field through an SLR lens. And yes, I do think focusing using a rangefinder patch is faster than manually focusing a modern SLR with focus assistance. At Andre Peiboshi says, I doubt anyone with such an attitude like this would ever teach in a university today. And I'm not referring only to his arrogance, but literally to a total lack of objectivity in his way to support any statement he makes. All he says is, it is like this because I say it. It's facts.
I know what I'm talking about. It's a fact.
So I wanted to get into this. This is kind of the main topic of what I wanted to discuss today. A lot of people were talking about his arrogance and how just sure he was and how he wasn't both sidesing things. He was like, no, this is what I believe, and you're stupid if you don't believe it. And yes, he's a little gruff, he's a little curmudgeon-y, but I kind of like that. And I don't even necessarily say I agree with him totally. I think I totally get where he's coming from, and I agree with him in the context of in which he is speaking and how it relates to his own work. But this comment about an attitude like this, or no one with an attitude like this would ever teach in a university today, I don't think that's a good thing. We'll get into this a little bit more. Another commenter says, fortunately, no one listened to him. I think a lot of people probably did. Here's somebody who says, I was never a big fan of Winogrand's work, but I want to speak up and defend him against the commenters. This is, at Tucson Analog Workshop, calling him narrow-minded, or worse. I don't know why it isn't clear to some, but it should be obvious that he's talking about his photography. You have to understand that back in those days, and into the 90s, practicing artists were hired to teach in colleges, even if they didn't have the MFA or PhD next to their name. Teachers like Winogrand are an absolute must for a vital education in the arts. Sadly, it seems like this way of doing things has all but disappeared in recent years, so no one works as an artist and teaches on the side anymore. It's the other way around. And somewhere along the line, we've gotten stuck in this feedback shame loop where every opinion needs to be preceded by a cautionary disclaimer. Both sidesing everything is not good teaching. It is the seemingly absolute or even silly statements that give a student the most food for thought in forging their own journey and arriving at their own destination if they're willing to put in the work. My God, at Tucson Analog Workshop, I couldn't have said that better myself. That is exactly how I feel about this. Saying that, something that comes to mind is that a good teacher is often not the best artist, and the best artist is often not the best teacher in terms of being able to explain their process or why they do the things they do. Sometimes people go into teaching because they are very good at doing that, but they're not necessarily very good at actually creating the art that they're teaching. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to have teachers like that. But I would have loved to have a curmudgeon-y guy like Gary Winogrand teaching me photography, because it would force me to question some of my own preconceptions about things. And the fact that he is so sure of himself and his own work, I think is useful, because it shows you how you kind of have to be if you want to try to be an artist. If you're trying to create art, you can't be sitting there all the time second guessing everything you're doing and wondering like, well, yeah, they're right too, I'm right, he's right, nobody's right. You have to be able to take a stand, have a vision, follow that vision through, and you have to be sort of myopic about it. You have to be kind of stubborn and a jerk about it. Democracy or art is not a democratic pursuit. You have to be kind of a totalitarian when you're doing art. And so I kind of appreciate that about Winogrand, where he had his opinion and he stuck to his guns. And then finally, we have a comment that says, this is just from @...j. Well done for repeating Winogrand's example, but you have not been decisive or indecisive in finding what he was telling us about the difference between a photograph and a, quote, illustration within the contextual moment of what Winogrand hints is the truth of photography. I'm not going to tell you, or maybe I just did, what was Winogrand's personal theory on what photography is, because I think that learning is always personal and you have to find your own understanding. So thank you for that, Jay. And yes, I do want to revisit this. As I mentioned, I'm going to do another video about this where I try to illustrate more clearly what Winogrand was talking about. And you need to watch this first Winogrand video to know to what I am referring, and then watch this second one. It's all very interesting. I really loved all the responses. I loved the negative comments. I loved the positive comments. I liked the debate that was going on in the comments. A lot of really long, in-depth, well-thought-out comments. So I'd suggest to all of you, if you have any interest in photography at all, watch the video, read through the comment section, because the comment section is almost, or probably even more, insightful than the video itself is, and just see the way people were discussing this subject and the arguments they were making. All really cool, really interesting stuff. Thank you to all the people who left comments. There's some sort of flashing red light happening on my camera. I don't know what it means. I can't see the screen because the sun is shining directly on it. We may just end at any moment. I don't know. But now it is time for hashtag #AskStuffandThings. We'll see if we can get through this. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like to answer it on the Sunday Stuff and Things, you can tweet at @SATBradley with the hashtag #AskStuffandThings, but you probably shouldn't, because nobody does, and I hardly ever read Twitter or X or whatever it's called. But if you are a Patreon supporter, you can leave me comments or questions via Patreon. Go right to the front of the line. You can hit that super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line. Or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback in the comment section of my YouTube video, just like we have some feedback from last week's Sunday Stuff and Things, just like @BatWithGlasses said. Interesting vision, or image. Were the dudes mansome, at least? So he's talking about the man nod that we were talking about last week, that men give each other. But seriously, it's just an unspoken sign of respect and acknowledgement. Happens to me constantly. Yes, so most people seem to agree with my theory on what the man nod is. I mean, it's obvious. All men know what it means. But it was a fun little subject, I thought. Frank D'Agostino 77 says, the nod is a mutual sign of acknowledgement of no threat. In that sense, it's indicative of politeness. I agree. Simon Brown 1486 says, working as a forensic clinician in a maximum security prison for decades, I had to learn the body language of the yard. The nod is more than just an acknowledgement. It's an assertive gesture that says, I see you and I come in peace, but if necessary, I am prepared to fight like a bloody maniac. The eye contact whilst lowering the chin mimics the fight posture and projects confidence and strength. If the other bloke returns the gesture, then you have an unspoken contract of mutual respect. If not, then you would be wise to reevaluate your options. So I'm assuming that within the prison context, the nod takes on even a more important or slightly different character. I think in day-to-day life, when I'm nodding to somebody, I'm not expecting that if they don't return the nod that we are going to kill each other. But I take your point, and that's very interesting. Colin Kelly 279 says, you have perhaps shared one of the greatest secrets of manhood, sir. This is troubling. Now they will all know. Sorry about that, Colin Kelly. Matty Polo 1 says, totally hate auto translation. So I was talking about the auto dubbing on YouTube, and I wanted to know if there were any people who use English as a second language who could tell me about how well the videos were being translated. I need to look at this. I don't know what's going on. Are we still recording? It seems that we are. I guess it's fine. And so Matty Polo says, I hate the auto translations. They are wrong most of the time and make everything harder to understand. It could be nice if it was optional, but sometimes the auto translate is the default. And now the titles, the video description is all translated without the option to see the original. YouTube says it's an option from the creators. If this is true, please disable the auto translation. It's just awful. As a Chilean and native Spanish speaker, the voice in the Spanish translation is a generic voice they use for all the Spanish translations. It sounds more natural than the usual robotic voice, and there is some AIs that use your voice to speak in other languages, so maybe YouTube will be using something similar in the future. So yeah, interesting to hear. I know if you set your language to a particular language, I've had this before where there was a video in Spanish that started auto-playing in English with that AI voice. And then I just had to go into the settings on that particular video and change it back to the original language. You should be able to do that. At Blackadder665 says, regarding the AI voices, I am German. I probably should not do a horribly offensive German stereotypical accent, and I'm horrible at it anyway, but we'll try. I'm German, and while the vocabulary and the grammar were correct, the choice of words and phrases sounded odd. No real person would talk like that. Also, the pronunciation was overly correct and stiff. Again, no real person speaks like that. But this is to be expected from AI, at least for now. The intonation was robotic. I know this last one may amuse English speakers since our language does already sound robotic to you, right? But especially the word endings were unnaturally and comically overemphasized. I will stop this now. I'm sure I've offended Blackadder greatly. Still, though, an astonishing achievement and creeping, considering that it gets better and better by the minute. As for your question, yes, for someone not so fluent in English, this is a viable option to watch videos. Fun video as always, good friend Bradley. Thanks. Best Michael, and he has a postscript. It is starting to feel that way since I've been a subscriber. So he says, good friend Bradley, star, or an asterisk, and then he says, it is starting to feel that way since I've been a subscriber for so many years, approximately 10, I think. P.S. Just checked, I started to watch when your background settings look like this, and he shows a picture of my very old apartment. So wow, thank you. You've been here from the very beginning, and I appreciate that. And then finally we have at David Dixon 6408 says, I agree with you. Listening to an audiobook is definitely not the same as reading it. And on that subject, there will be no more debate. Thank you for all that feedback. Please keep it coming in. It really helps make the show go. And finally, gang, it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support Stuff and Things on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it is much appreciated. It is basically the way that I can keep making these videos. If you like anything I do on YouTube or Patreon, the exclusive videos that I post on Patreon, then your support on Patreon is what is making all of that possible. We have exclusive videos on Patreon. Anything pipe related has to go on Patreon now. You get the non-exclusive videos early and ad-free on Patreon. And we are putting an archive of all the old pipe blend reviews on Patreon as well. And you'll have access to those on Patreon. $5 a month gets you in. And every week we like to shout out those who support Stuff and Things at $25 or more a month. The producers of Stuff and Things. People like Jason Buckner, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, The Friendly Piper, GreatGrol, Glenn, Just Glenn, David Severin, Nicholas James, Kyle Whitmore, Mr. Gibson, and Chris Caughey. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support Stuff and Things at $100 a month. Stolid, dependable Bob Magee, and we'll never forget our dearly departed friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, what can you look forward to exclusively on Patreon this week? Well, this Monday we will have the I'm Not Going to Like Gawith, Hoggarth, and Co. Kendal Black Cherry video. And then on Thursday, we will have another entry from the archives, the old pipe blends, old pipe blend reviews. We're working through them all. We're still in 2015. We're 10 years ago right now in that, but we've gotten dozens and dozens on there. So definitely check that out. Check out Patreon if you are interested. Stay tuned for all the other good stuff we have coming up on YouTube and Patreon. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a Sunday. Stuff and Things. I'll see you later. I think I got away with it. Why are you flashing? What does the flashing mean?